Madam President, let me be very frank. While the bailout package we are dealing with tonight is far better than the absurd proposal that was originally presented to us by the Bush administration, which, if you can believe it, would have given the Secretary of the Treasury a blank check to spend $700 billion in any way that he wanted, without any transparency, without any oversight, and without any judicial review. This bill, far better than that, is still short of where we should be. And I want to thank Senator Dodd and others for their very hard work in improving this legislation. But in my view, this bill is still not good enough. It should be rejected by the Senate unless an amendment that I am about to offer is passed. This bill does not effectively address the issue of what the taxpayers of our country will actually own after they invest hundreds of billions of dollars in toxic assets. This bill does not effectively address the issue of oversight because the board members, the oversight board members, were handpicked from the Bush administration. This bill does not effectively deal with the issue of foreclosures and addressing that very, very serious issue, which is impacting millions of low and moderate income Americans in the aggressive, effective kind of way that we should be. This bill does not effectively deal with the issue of executive compensation and golden parachutes. Under this bill, the CEOs and the Wall Street insiders will still, with a little bit of imagination, continue to make out like bandits. Madam President, this bill does not deal at all with how we got into this crisis in the first place and the need to undo the deregulation fervor which created trillions of dollars in complicated and unregulated financial instruments such as credit default swaps and hedge funds. This bill does not address the issue that has taken us to where we are today, the concept of too big to fail, the need for taxpayers to bail out institutions which are so large that they will cause systemic damage to our entire economy if they go bankrupt. This bill does not address the major economic crises we face, growing unemployment, low wages, and the need to create decent-paying jobs, rebuilding our infrastructure, and moving us to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. But on top of all that, Madam President, there is one issue that is even more profound and more basic than everything else that I have mentioned, and that is, if a bailout is needed, if taxpayer money must be placed at risk, whose money should it be? In other words, who should be paying for this bailout, which has been caused by the greed and recklessness of Wall Street operatives who have made billions in recent years? And that, Madam President, is what my amendment is all about. Madam President, in our country today, we have the most unequal distribution of income and wealth of any major country on earth, with the top 1% earning more income than the bottom 50%, and the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%. Madam President, we are living at a time when we have seen a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the very wealthiest people in this country. When, among others, CEOs of Wall Street firms received unbelievable amounts in bonuses, including $39 billion in bonuses in the year 2007 alone for just the 5 major investment houses. We have seen the incredible greed of the financial service industry manifested in the hundreds of millions of dollars they have spent on campaign contributions and lobbyists in order to deregulate their industry so that hedge funds and other unregulated financial institutions could flourish. We have seen them play with trillions and trillions of dollars in esoteric financial instruments in unregulated industries which no more than a handful of people even understand. We have seen the financial services industry charge 30% interest rates on credit card loans and tack on outrageous late fees and other costs to unsuspecting customers. We have seen them engaged in despicable predatory lending practices, taking advantage of the vulnerable and the uneducated. Madam President, in the midst of all of this, we have a bailout package today which says to the middle class that you are being asked to place at risk $700 billion, which is $2,200 for every man, woman, and child in this country. And you're being asked to do that in order to undo the damage caused by this excessive Wall Street greed. In other words, the masters of the universe, those brilliant Wall Street insiders who have made more money than the average American can even dream of, have brought our financial system to the brink of collapse. And now, as the American and world financial systems teeter on the edge of a meltdown, these multimillionaires are demanding that the middle class, which has already suffered under Bush's disastrous economic policies, pick up the pieces that they broke. That is wrong, and that is something that I will not support. That if we are going to bail out Wall Street, it should be those people who have caused the problem, those people who have benefited from Bush's tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, those people who have taken advantage of deregulation. Those people are the people who should pick up the tab and not ordinary working people. What my amendment proposes is quite simple. It proposes to raise the tax rate on any individual earning $500,000 a year or more, or any family earning $1 million a year or more, by 10%. That 10% increase in the tax rate from 35% to 45% will raise over $300 billion in the next 5 years. $300 billion is almost half the cost of the bailout. If what all the supporters of this legislation are saying is correct, that the government will get back some of its money when the market calms down and the government sells some of the assets it has purchased, this amount of $300 billion should be sufficient to make sure that 99.7% of taxpayers do not have to pay one nickel for this bailout. Madam President, most of my constituents did not earn a $38 million bonus in 2005 or make over $100 million in total compensation in 3 years, as did Mr. Henry Paulson, current Secretary of the Treasury and former CEO of Goldman Sachs. Last week, I placed on my website, sanders.senate.gov, a letter to Secretary Paulson in support of the content of my amendment, which was pretty simple. It said that it should be those people best able to pay for this bailout, those people who have made out like bandits in recent years, they should be asked to pay for this bailout, and it should not be the middle class. And to my amazement, and I'm a senator from a small state, to my amazement, some 48,000 people, and here they are, these are their names, and I will not read them all off, Madam President. 48,000 people have already co-signed this petition, and the names keep coming in, and the message is very simple. We had nothing to do with causing this bailout. We are already under economic duress. Go to those people who have made out like bandits, go to those people who have caused this crisis, and ask them to pay for the bailout.